Hello guys, in this section I want to talk about default arguments in Python. So let's go and let's define a simple function with the name main function, and as an argument it will gives name and message here, and simply it will print the message and after that name. Okay, let's call this function that we defined my function, and with the name Hussein and with the message, for example, hi. Let's go and run this. Simply we will see hi Hussein in our output. Okay, so let's go and let's see what is default arguments. We want to have default value for our arguments. For example, for message, we want to have default value and the value of that will be high. We can simply define a default value with our arguments and put equal and then write the value that we want. In this case, if I don't pass the second argument when I calling the function, so let me kill this terminal and run this again. If I don't pass anything as a second argument here, it won't return any error. But if we don't have any default value here, we have error, and it says I expected two argument but you are passing just one. So we can also have these default values for our arguments to prevent these kinds of error. What will happen if I pass argument when I call the function? For the message, we have default value and the value of that is high. But when I calling the function in line 4, I passing the second argument as hello. What will happen? It will simply override the value that we have. And it will use hello instead of instead of hi and default value that we have. Okay, let's go and let's define another function. I want to have same function like this here, and simply I just want to change the position of name and message, and let's call it here. As you can see, it will return syntax error. What is the error? When we are using default and non-default arguments, non-default arguments should come first. It means for the name we don't have any default value, so it should come before arguments that have default value. Okay, we can simply remove that and put it here to prevent the error. Let's assume that we have another argument like family, and the value of that is, for example, something like this. Okay, it's again returning an error. So we have a rule here. If you are defining a default argument in your function, all the non-default arguments should come first, and after that, as soon as you define a default for one of your arguments, like this. After that, all other arguments also should have default. So we are not able to have family here without any default. So it's one of the rule that's very important when we are using default arguments in our function. So let's go and have another example. Order coffee, and it will give size, and the default value of that will be large. And another one, for example, let's have type, and it will be latte. I want to simply print them like this. Your order is type, and after that size. As you can see here, for both of the arguments that I have in this function, we have default value. So how we can call this order coffee? We can simply call this and don't pass any arguments. Why? Because for both of the arguments that we have in this function, we have default value. And it will print your order is latte large, or maybe something like this, large latte. Okay. So what will happen if I pass one of them? For example, size. I want to pass it here as small. It will use this value, I mean small, instead of large that we had as a default value. So why it won't return any error for the type argument? Because it has default value and it's not mandatory to pass it here in the when we want to call a function. Okay, so it's very important. Let me talk about it again, talk about some points again. When you have a default argument and call your function and pass that argument to the function, it will be override, and the value that we are passing to the function will be used instead of the default value. Another thing that it's really important for us here is that when we are using default arguments, the order that we are defining the argument in our function is really important. At first, we should write all the non-default arguments, and after that, all the default arguments will come.